The proposition. The coffee shop buzzed with afternoon energy, but Celeste Rivera sat in the corner booth feeling like the world was closing in around her. Her fingers traced the rim of her untouched latte as she stared at the medical bills spread across the small table. $15,000. That's what stood between her brother James and the surgery that could save his vision. Her phone buzzed with a text from her roommate. "That guy is here. Expensive suit, looks serious. Good luck." Celeste looked up to see a tall man in a charcoal gray suit scanning the cafe. Marcus Blackwood. Even from across the room, his presence commanded attention. Dark hair perfectly styled, sharp jawline, and eyes that seemed to calculate the worth of everything they landed on. When his gaze found hers, she felt like a business proposition being evaluated. He approached her table with confident strides, extending a hand. "Miss Rivera, thank you for meeting me on such short notice." His handshake was firm, professional. Celeste had expected warmth, maybe a smile, but Marcus Blackwood conducted himself like this was a board meeting. "Your friend mentioned you might be interested in a unique opportunity," he said, sliding into the seat across from her. He didn't even glance at the medical bills before she hastily gathered them up. "I'm listening," Celeste replied, trying to match his businesslike tone despite her racing heart. Marcus pulled out a tablet, swiping to what appeared to be a contract. "I need a companion for business functions, someone intelligent, presentable, who can handle social situations with grace. The arrangement would last 6 months. Celeste blinked. "You want to hire me as... what exactly?" "A girlfriend, for appearances only." His tone remained neutral, as if discussing stock options. "My investors are concerned about my image. They think I'm too focused on work, lacking the stability that comes with a committed relationship. Your presence would demonstrate otherwise." The audacity of it should have offended her, but desperation made her lean forward instead. "What's the compensation?" $25,000. Half up front, half upon completion." Marcus's eyes didn't leave her face, studying her reaction. "You'd attend approximately 12 events, learn basic information about my business, and maintain the appearance of a romantic relationship in public settings." 25,000. More than enough for James's surgery, with money left over for his recovery period. Celeste's practical mind warred with her pride. "Why me?" she asked. For the first time, something almost like a smile touched Marcus's lips. "You're studying art therapy at the community college. You work 2 part-time jobs but maintain excellent grades. You're intelligent enough to handle complex conversations but not connected to my business world. And frankly, you need the money badly enough to take this seriously." Heat flushed her cheeks. He'd investigated her thoroughly, reducing her entire life to a few calculated bullet points. "There would be rules," Marcus continued. "No emotional attachments, no media interviews without approval, complete discretion about the nature of our arrangement. Think of it as an acting job with excellent pay." Celeste stared at the contract. On his screen. 6 months of pretending to care about someone who saw her as a line item in his business strategy. 6 months of letting Marcus Blackwood purchase her affection. But James needed that surgery. "I'll need the first payment within 24 hours, she said quietly. Marcus nodded, extending his hand again. "We have a deal, Ms. Rivera." As their hands met for the second time, Celeste couldn't shake the feeling that she was signing away more than just her time, but James's future was worth the price of her pride. "Call me Celeste," she said. "If we're going to be dating, we should probably use first names." "Marcus," he replied. Then, almost as an afterthought, "We start Friday, black tie event. I'll have something appropriate sent to your address." And just like that, Celeste Rivera became a woman for hire. Playing the part. The black dress arrived exactly as promised. wrapped in a tissue paper that probably cost more than Celeste's monthly grocery budget. She ran her fingers over the silk fabric, marveling at how something so simple could feel so luxurious. A note from Marcus's assistant, Diana Chen, was tucked inside. Shoes and accessories to follow. Car arrives at 7 p.m. sharp. Standing in front of her cramped apartment's only full-length mirror, Celeste barely recognized herself. The dress hugged her curves perfectly, and the matching heels added an elegant height she wasn't used to. She'd spent an hour watching YouTube tutorials on formal makeup and somehow managed to create a look that was both sophisticated and still recognizably her. The knock on her door came at exactly 7 p.m. Marcus stood in the hallway wearing a tuxedo that probably cost more than her semester's tuition. His dark eyes swept over her appearance with the same calculating assessment she'd grown accustomed to. "You look appropriate," he said, which she supposed was his version of a compliment. The charity gala was held at the city's most exclusive hotel, a glittering affair where champagne flowed as freely as business cards. Celeste's hand rested lightly on Marcus's arm as he guided her through the crowd, introducing her with the same measured tone he used for everything else. "This is Celeste, my girlfriend," he'd say, and she'd smile warmly while her stomach twisted with the lie. But as the evening progressed, something unexpected happened. When Marcus got pulled into a heated discussion about sustainable technology, Celeste found herself genuinely engaged. She asked questions, offered thoughtful observations, and watched as Marcus's eyebrows rose slightly in surprise. "You actually understand what they were talking about," he said during a quiet moment by the bar. "I may be an art student, but I'm not stupid," Celeste replied, accepting the wine he offered. "Climate change affects everyone regardless of their major." Marcus studied her with new interest. Most people at these events just nod and pretend to follow along. "I'm not most people." Something flickered in his expression. Surprise, maybe? Even respect. But it vanished so quickly Celeste wondered if she'd imagined it. The next few weeks fell into a rhythm. Marcus would send Diana's meticulously planned schedules: dinner with potential investors, a tech conference, a gallery opening, that made Celeste's heart ache with longing for her own artistic ambitions. Each event required her to slip into the role of devoted girlfriend, laughing at the right moments, asking intelligent questions, playing the part of a woman who could balance Marcus's driven personality. What surprised her was how easily the acting became. Marcus was undeniably brilliant, his passion for innovation genuinely impressive when he let his guard down enough to show it. During a quiet dinner with his business partner, Richard, she watched him explain a new software development with such enthusiasm that his usual cold demeanor cracked completely. "You really love what you do," she said later as their driver navigated the city's evening traffic. Marcus glanced at her, his expression guarded again. "It's what I'm good at." "That's not the same thing." He was quiet for a long moment. "No, I suppose it isn't." These glimpses of the man behind the businessman became more frequent. Celeste began to notice how Marcus remembered small details: her preference for white wine over red, the way she unconsciously tucked her hair behind her ear when nervous, her tendency to study the artwork at every venue they visited. He never commented on these observations, but he'd quietly ensure her wine glass was filled with Sauvignon Blanc, or position them near interesting paintings during cocktail receptions. The eye. First payment had arrived as promised, allowing Celeste to schedule James's surgery. The relief of watching her younger brother's face light up when she told him the good news was worth every moment of pretense. But as she sat in the hospital waiting room during his procedure, her phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. "How is your brother? Diana mentioned he had surgery today." She stared at the message, surprised by the personal inquiry. Marcus never asked about her life outside their arrangement. "Surgery went well. Recovery will take a few weeks," she replied. "Good. Take tomorrow off if you need it." It was a small kindness, but it caught her off guard. Marcus Blackwood wasn't supposed to care about her personal struggles. That night, after James was settled in his hospital room, Celeste found herself replaying moments from their recent appearances together. The way Marcus's hand had lingered on her back during introductions. How he'd stepped closer when other men showed her attention. The almost smile he'd given her when she'd successfully navigated a particularly challenging conversation with a difficult investor. Were those calculated moves for their audience, or something else? "Stop it," she whispered to her reflection in the bathroom mirror. "This is business, nothing more." But as she fell asleep that night, Celeste couldn't shake the memory of Marcus's concerned text, or the way her heart had skipped when she'd seen his name on her phone screen. 3 months into their arrangement, the lines were already starting to blur. Cracks in the facade. The call came at 2 a.m. on a Tuesday night. Celeste's phone buzzed insistently, dragging her from deep sleep. James's name flashed on the screen, and her heart immediately lurched with panic. "Celeste!" Her brother's voice was thick with pain and fear. "I can't see anything. Everything went dark about an hour ago, and it's not getting better." She was dressed and out the door within minutes, her hands shaking as she called a taxi to rush to the hospital. The emergency room was a blur of fluorescent lights and antiseptic smells as doctors examined James, their expressions growing increasingly grave. "There's been a complication with the healing process," Dr. Martinez explained, his voice gentle but serious. "We need to perform another procedure immediately, or there could be permanent damage. Another surgery. Another $15,000. They didn't have. Celeste sank into the uncomfortable waiting room chair, her carefully constructed world crumbling around her. The money from Marcus was already spoken for. James's initial surgery, his medications, their mother's outstanding debts. She pressed her palms against her eyes, fighting back tears of exhaustion and desperation. Her phone buzzed. A text from Diana. "Mr. Blackwood is looking for you. Tonight's investor dinner is in 3 hours." She'd completely forgotten. Some pharmaceutical executive Marcus needed to impress. Another evening of playing the devoted girlfriend while her actual world fell apart. "Family emergency. Can't make it tonight," she typed back. Her phone rang immediately. Marcus's name appeared on the screen. "What's wrong?" His voice was sharp with concern, not annoyance at her absence. "My brother," she said quietly, aware of other families nearby dealing with their own crises. "There were complications from his surgery. He needs another procedure tonight." Silence stretched between them. Celeste expected him to hang up, maybe send Diana with instructions about rescheduling their next appearance. Instead, he said, "Which hospital?" "Marcus, you don't need to—" "Which hospital, Celeste?" 20 minutes later, she looked up from her vigil beside James's bed to see Marcus Blackwood walking through the hospital corridors, still wearing his business suit, but looking somehow less polished than usual. He'd loosened his tie, and his usually perfect hair showed signs of being run through with anxious fingers. "How is he?" Marcus asked, settling into the chair beside her without being invited. "Scared," she admitted, watching James sleep fitfully, under the influence of pre-surgical medication. "The doctors say this procedure should fix the problem, but—" She trailed off, unable to voice her fears. Marcus studied James's young face, then looked at Celeste. "He looks like you? Same stubborn chin?" Despite everything, she almost smiled. "He's the artistic one in the family, actually. Wants to be a photographer, once his vision stabilizes." "What does he photograph?" The question was so normal, so genuinely curious, that Celeste found herself talking. She told Marcus about James's passion for street photography, his dream of documenting social issues through his lens, the way he saw beauty in the most unexpected places. Marcus listened without interruption, occasionally asking thoughtful questions that showed he was really hearing her. When the surgical team came to take James to the operating room, Marcus stood as well. "I'll take care of the financial arrangements," he said quietly. "Marcus? No, that's not part of our deal." "This isn't about the deal." His voice was firm, brooking no argument. "This is about someone you love needing help." While James was in surgery, they sat in the waiting room sharing terrible coffee from vending machines. Marcus had shed his jacket and rolled up his sleeves, looking more human than Celeste had ever seen him. They talked about everything and nothing: her art therapy studies, his complicated relationship with his late father's business legacy, the way hospitals smelled the same everywhere. "Why did you really need a fake girlfriend?" she asked during one of the quiet lulls. Marcus was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. "My father built his company on the belief that business leaders should be stable, trustworthy. After he died, the board questioned whether I had those qualities. I've spent so many years focused on work that He paused, searching for words. "I never learned how to let people in. The fake relationship seemed easier than trying to form a real one." "Easier isn't always better," Celeste said softly. He looked at her then, really looked at her, and for a moment the carefully maintained distance between them evaporated completely. "No," he agreed, "it isn't." When Dr. Martinez emerged hours later with news that the surgery had been successful, Celeste collapsed against Marcus's chest in relief. His arms came around her automatically, holding her as she finally let the tears fall. For those few minutes, there was nothing fake about the comfort he offered or the way she accepted it. But by the time James was settled in recovery, Marcus had retreated behind his professional mask again. He arranged for the best private room, ensured the medical bills were handled, and departed with nothing more than a formal, "I'm glad he's all right." That night, alone in her apartment, Celeste stared at the contract terms on her phone. 3 months left of their arrangement. 3 months of pretending not to care about a man who'd sat with her through the longest night of her recent memory, who'd paid for her brother's surgery without being asked, who'd shown her glimpses of genuine warmth before carefully locking it away again. She was falling for Marcus Blackwood, and he was determined to remain unreachable. The realization terrified her more than any medical bill ever could. The silent exit. The Blackwood Industries annual gala was everything Marcus had worked toward. Crystal chandeliers cast elegant shadows over the city's elite, champagne glasses clinked with the sound of successful deals, and the announcement that had just been made from the podium sealed his complete control over his father's company. He should have felt triumphant. Instead, Marcus found himself scanning the crowd for Celeste, who had excused herself to the ladies' room 20 minutes ago and hadn't returned. Their 6 months were officially up tomorrow. Tonight was meant to be their final performance, the crowning achievement of their business arrangement. Celeste had played her part flawlessly throughout the evening, charming investors and their wives, laughing at the right moments. Her hand, warm and familiar in his as they posed for photographs that would appear in tomorrow's business section. But something had felt different about her tonight. A distance that went beyond their professional boundaries, a sadness in her smile that made his chest tighten with unfamiliar anxiety. "Marcus, congratulations!" Richard Blackwood approached with a group of board members, their faces flushed with celebration and expensive wine. "Full control of the company and such a lovely young woman by your side. Your father would be proud." Marcus accepted their handshakes and backslaps, but his attention kept drifting toward the ballroom's exit. Where was Celeste? "She's quite remarkable," continued Mrs. Patterson, one of the senior board members. "I was just telling her how refreshing it is to see you with someone who challenges you intellectually. Most young women these days are only interested in a man's bank account." A cold weight settled in Marcus's stomach. "What exactly did you say to her?" "Oh, just how impressed we all are that you found someone genuine. So many gold diggers in your position. You know. But Celeste clearly loves you for who you are, not what you have." The irony hit Marcus like a physical blow. Here were his colleagues praising Celeste's authenticity while she was being paid to pretend to care about him. But the cruel joke was that somewhere along the way, her performance had begun to feel real to him. The way she listened when he talked about work challenges, her thoughtful questions about his projects, the comfort of her presence during quiet moments. It had all felt genuine because it was genuine, he realized with sudden clarity. Celeste had never been acting during their private conversations. She'd been herself, curious, compassionate, intellectually engaged. The only thing that had been fake was her romantic interest in him. "Excuse me," Marcus said abruptly, leaving the confused board members behind as he strode toward the exit. The hotel lobby was nearly empty. Marcus approached the concierge, whose professional smile never wavered despite the late hour. "The young woman who was with me, did you see her leave?" "Yes, sir. About 15 minutes ago. She asked me to give you this." The envelope was cream-colored hotel stationery with his name written in Celeste's careful handwriting. Marcus's hands were steady as he opened it, but the words inside made his world tilt sideways. "Marcus, by the time you read this, our contract will be complete. You have your board approval, and I have what I needed for James's medical care. We both fulfilled our obligations perfectly. I want you to know that these 6 months taught me things about myself I didn't expect to learn. You challenged me to be articulate about subjects I'd never discussed, introduced me to a world I'd only imagined, and showed me that success doesn't always come at the cost of integrity, but I also learned that I can't continue pretending something that's become real for me while remaining meaningless to you. You needed someone to play a role, and I needed financial security. The transaction is complete. I hope you find whatever it is you're actually looking for. Thank you for everything. Celeste P.S. Diana has my forwarding information for tax purposes. Marcus." Read the note 3 times, each pass making the ache in his chest more pronounced. She'd walked away cleanly, professionally, treating their months together exactly as they'd originally agreed, a business transaction with a defined end date. He should have felt relieved. The complication of managing emotions during a fake relationship was over. He could return to his predictable, controlled life without worrying about someone else's needs or feelings. Instead, he felt hollow. The next few weeks passed in a blur of business meetings and strategic planning sessions. Marcus threw himself into work with renewed intensity, expanding market shares and developing new products with the single-minded focus that had always served him well. The board was thrilled with his leadership. Stock prices rose steadily. Everything was exactly as it should be. But his penthouse apartment felt too quiet. Business dinners lacked the spark of intelligent conversation he'd grown accustomed to. Art galleries and cultural events, places Celeste had always lingered longest during their public appearances, seemed pointless without someone who actually appreciated what they were seeing. Diana noticed first. "Sir, you've declined the last 4 social invitations. The PR department is asking if you'd like them to arrange some public appearances." "That won't be necessary," Marcus replied, not looking up from his computer screen. "And the flowers for Ms. Rivera?" Marcus's fingers froze. Over his keyboard. "What flowers? You asked me to send congratulatory flowers when her brother's photography won that student competition. The arrangement is ready for delivery." He had no memory of requesting flowers, but the fact that Diana had thought to track James's achievements felt both thoughtful and painful. Somewhere in his subconscious, he was still paying attention to Celeste's life, still caring about the things that mattered to her. "Cancel them," he said quietly. That night, Marcus stood at his floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, holding a glass of scotch he had no intention of drinking. 34 years old, financially successful beyond his father's wildest dreams, and completely alone by choice. For the first time in his adult life, the choice felt wrong. The pursuit of truth 3 months after Celeste had walked out of his life, Marcus found himself standing outside the Riverside Community Art Center, feeling more nervous than he had before any boardroom presentation. The small gallery was hosting a student exhibition, and according to his carefully casual inquiry to the college's art department, Celeste Rivera would be displaying her work. He told himself he just wanted to see if she was doing well. A professional courtesy, checking on a former business associate. The fact that he'd been thinking about her daily, that he'd driven past her apartment building twice without stopping, that he'd started and deleted dozens of text messages, none of that meant anything beyond normal concern. The gallery was crowded, with families and friends celebrating student achievements. Marcus felt overdressed in his usual business attire, surrounded by people in casual clothes who actually belonged in this warm, creative space. He almost turned around and left. Then he saw her. Celeste stood beside a series of mixed media pieces, explaining her work to a small group of visitors. She wore a flowing navy dress that he'd never seen before, her hair loose around her shoulders instead of styled for formal events. She looked happy, relaxed in a way she'd never been during their months together. The realization struck him like a physical blow. He'd never seen Celeste in her natural element before. Even during their most genuine conversations, she'd been dressed for his world, performing for his colleagues, adapting to his expectations. This was who she was when she wasn't being paid to fit into his life. The pieces explore the relationship between healing and identity, Celeste was saying to her audience. How trauma can fragment our sense of self, but also how the process of recovery can reveal strength we didn't know we possessed. Marcus moved closer, studying her artwork with new eyes. The paintings were bold and raw, incorporating photographs, fabric, and found objects in ways that spoke of pain transformed into beauty. One piece in particular caught his attention. A canvas where broken mirrors reflected images of medical equipment. But the cracks formed the shape of hands reaching toward each other. "That one's about my brother," Celeste said softly. Marcus turned to find her standing beside him, her expression carefully neutral. The small crowd had dispersed, leaving them alone beside her work. "It's powerful," he said, meaning it completely. "Thank you." She clasped her hands in front of her, the gesture achingly familiar. "I didn't expect to see you here. I wanted to see your work, the real work, not just what you studied." Marcus paused, searching for the right words. "I realized I never knew what you were actually passionate about." Celeste's laugh held no humor. "We weren't exactly in the business of sharing passions, Marcus." The formality in her voice cut him deeper than any anger could have. She was treating him like a stranger, which he supposed he deserved. "James is doing well?" he asked. "Completely. Recovered. His photography is thriving, actually. He got a scholarship to art school." Pride warmed her voice when she spoke of her brother. "I heard about the competition he won." "Congratulations." Celeste's eyebrows rose slightly. "You heard about that?" Marcus struggled with how to explain that he'd been keeping track of her life from a distance. "Diana mentioned it." They stood in awkward silence, surrounded by Celeste's art and the sounds of celebration from other parts of the gallery. Everything Marcus had planned to say, apologies, explanations, requests for second chances, seemed inadequate in the face of her polite distance. "Why are you really here, Marcus?" Celeste asked finally. The question he'd been dreading and hoping for in equal measure. Marcus looked at her artwork again, at the visual representation of her inner world that he'd never been allowed to see during their months together. "Because I can't stop thinking about you," he said quietly. "Because every business dinner feels empty without your questions. Because I find myself wanting to tell you about my day, even though I have no right to expect you to care." Celeste's expression softened slightly, but her voice remained guarded. "We had a business arrangement, Marcus. It ended exactly as it was supposed to." "No, it didn't." Marcus turned to face her fully. It was supposed to be fake, but somewhere along the way, at least for me, it became real, and I was too scared of that reality to admit it until you were gone. Scared of what, exactly? Of needing someone, of caring about someone more than I cared about control. He gestured toward her artwork. Of discovering that the person I was, falling for, had depths I'd never bothered to explore because I was so focused on what she could do for me. Celeste was quiet for a long moment, studying his face with the same intensity she'd once brought to difficult conversations with his colleagues. "I fell for you too," she said finally. "But I fell for moments when you forgot to be the CEO, when you sat with me in the hospital, when you asked about James's photography not because it was good PR, but because you knew it mattered to me." She shook her head sadly. "But those moments were rare, Marcus. Most of the time, I was still just playing a part in your carefully managed life." "Then let me learn how to do better," Marcus said. "Not as your employer or your business arrangement. As someone who wants to know the woman who created this." He gestured toward her artwork. "Someone who wants to understand what drives your passion for healing through art, who James really is beyond his medical challenges, what makes you laugh when no one's watching." "That's not how it works," Celeste replied. "You can't just decide. You want the real version of someone after months of preferring the performance." "You're right. I can't." Marcus reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small canvas board. "But maybe I can start by showing you something real about me." Celeste accepted the canvas with curious eyes. It was a rough, amateur painting, clearly Marcus's first attempt with brushes and paint. The image was simple, a city skyline at night, but instead of the usual bright lights, the windows glowed with warm, soft colors that seemed to reach toward each other across the darkness. "I started taking painting classes," Marcus said, his voice uncertain in a way she'd never heard before. "Terrible at it, obviously, but the instructor said art is about expressing what you can't say with words." He paused. "That's how you made me feel during those moments you mentioned, like the lights in my carefully controlled world suddenly had warmth instead of just efficiency." Celeste stared at the painting, then at Marcus. "You took art classes?" "Tuesday and Thursday evenings, for the past 2 months. Also pottery, but that was a disaster." A small smile tugged at his lips. "Turns out I'm not good at things I can't control with spreadsheets and strategic planning." Despite herself, Celeste smiled back. "Art is definitely not controllable." "Neither is this," Marcus said softly. "Whatever this is between us. I can't strategize my way into deserving another chance with you. I can't make a business plan for earning your trust. All I can do is ask if you'd be willing to start over. Not as employer and employee, not as fake anything, just as two people getting to know each other honestly." Celeste looked around the gallery at her artwork that represented years of personal growth and healing, then back at Marcus holding his amateur painting like an offering. "It would have to be completely different," she said carefully. "No contracts, no expectations, no timeline. Just seeing what happens." "I understand. And I won't be your project to fix or improve. I'm not broken, Marcus. I never was." "I know." Marcus's voice was firm with conviction. "You were always the strongest person in any room we entered together. It just took me too long to recognize that strength wasn't something I was paying for. It was something you were choosing to share." Celeste was quiet for a long moment, then extended her hand toward him. "Hi, I'm Celeste Rivera. I'm an art therapy student. I worry constantly about my little brother, and I have very strong opinions about social justice issues." Marcus accepted her handshake, his smile more genuine than she'd ever seen it. "Marcus Blackwood. I'm a workaholic CEO who's learning that success means nothing if you don't have someone to share it with. And I'd very much like to take you to coffee sometime and hear those strong opinions." "Just coffee?" Celeste asked, one eyebrow raised. "Just coffee," Marcus confirmed. "Though I should warn you, I'm hoping it leads to many more conversations about art, justice, photography, and whatever else matters to the real Celeste Rivera. As they shook hands in the middle of the gallery, surrounded by art that spoke of healing and transformation, neither of them pretended to know what would happen next. But for the first time in months, the uncertainty felt like possibility instead of risk. "Coffee sounds good," Celeste said, "but I'm buying my own cup." Marcus laughed, the sound surprised and delighted. "I wouldn't expect anything less.